At number 10, we have the Leonid Comet Storm. People say when you see a shooting star, you should make a wish and it will come true. Well, if that's the case, then when you go to this comet storm, you should basically bank up on everything you've ever wanted ever, because you're gonna get so many wishes, you're gonna run out of stuff to wish for. You're gonna be rich, ripped, immortal, everything. The Leonid Comet Storm comes once every 33 years. So if you're lucky, you'll maybe be able to get to see it 3 times in your life. Most people will never see this bad boy ever, and a lot of people don't even know it exists. It is a magical and mysterious encounter, and you shouldn't miss it. The whole thing isn't very long. It comes and goes in about 15 minutes, but during that time you can expect to see somewhere between 900 to 1,000 comets every minute. That's a universal wonder that will blow your mind. Back to my original point, that means you could walk out of there with 15,000 wishes. I don't even know what I would want after the first 100. I'd be like, man, I guess give me like a hot tub full of hot dogs that are made of gold. Like, I got nothing else.
Coming in at number 9, we have a bus crushed by falling concrete. What I love about this video, during which nobody was hurt by the way, so don't worry. I love that the guy was just out there with his skateboard getting his friend to film him, and they ended up capturing some absolutely insane dramatic footage. As this skateboarder guy goes in for a second jump, a huge 2,500 kilo concrete block falls onto a parked bus in the background. Luckily nobody was on the bus, it was just an insane thing happening. Coming in at number 8, we have a plane nearly crash landing in the sea. A recent WestJet plane from Toronto to St. Martin's almost crash landed in the sea off the coast of the Caribbean island. On March the 7th, 2017, the pilot aborted a landing at Princess Juliana Airport as it looked close to clipping the water. The pilot said the reason for the last-minute abandonment was bad weather. A beach reveler shot some of the footage of the plane as it came really low over them. Can you imagine being underneath a Boeing 737 like that? Wow. A plane that was less lucky up next at number 7, we have the moment a Taiwanese plane clipped a bridge and crashed into a river in Taipei. Caught on a dashcam of a car driving along a highway, we see the moment that a commercial plane, TransAsia Airways Flight 235, flies right on over the road, clipping a car and the side of the bridge and then plummeting into the Keelung River. Unfortunately, 43 of the 58 people on board died. A much happier video up next. Coming in at number 6, we have Felix Baumgartner's stratosphere jump. More than 24 miles above the Earth's surface, Felix Baumgartner went to the very edge of the Earth's stratosphere. Pulses were racing as nothing like this had ever been attempted before. Things got especially dramatic as we witnessed him enter a violent spin. Felix free fell for over 4 minutes and then got back to Earth safely. Amazingly, it was all captured on a GoPro Hero 2, and we see some incredible images of the Earth from Felix's body camera. Okay, from here on in, it's all pretty dramatic, so keep your wits about you, I guess. Coming in at number 5, we have the JFK assassination. On the 22nd of November 1963, President John F. Kennedy was assassinated as he visited Dallas in Texas. Due to the public nature of his trip, cameras were rolling, shockingly capturing the moment when he was shot and his wife Jackie Kennedy tries to save him. In footage that will go down in history as some of the most notoriously iconic in the world, we see as the president is shot twice and Jackie freaks out trying to escape the horror. Ever since that moment, presidents have ridden in closed-top cars with bulletproof windows. Coming in at number 4, we have the Boxing Day tsunami. As the Japanese Boxing Day tsunami took place in 2004, many people had digital cameras and recorded the waves as they came rolling in. There are so many dramatic pieces of footage here it's hard to choose just one, but this video of pretty much a whole ocean rushing past a window is very intense. In total, over 250,000 people lost their lives as a result of this natural disaster. Coming in at number 3, we have the moment the second plane hit one of the Twin Towers on 9/11. As a result of the first impact, dozens of cameras were pointed to the towers when a second plane slammed into the South Tower less than 20 minutes later. The shock and panic in the voices of reporters and those around them is evident, making this footage all the more chilling. Now this leads us straight into our number 2 of our craziest events caught on camera, and that is the collapse of the World Trade Centers. Again, as the cameras were pointed at the buildings, they recorded the moments that the towers spectacularly crumbled to the ground. 3 buildings collapsed in total: the South Tower at 9:59 AM, the North Tower at 10:28 AM, and 7 World Trade Center at 5:21 PM. The world watched as more than just some buildings crumbled right before their very eyes. Okay guys, so let's end this video on a slightly happier note, but there are great things that have been caught on camera too, and coming in at number 1, we have the first man to walk on the moon. On the 20th of July 1969, Neil Armstrong famously made one small step for man and one giant leap for mankind, and the best part was, it was all caught on camera and broadcast across the world. Anybody over the age of 55 will be able to recall the moment that they sat down with their families and watched the moon landing. It is to this day the most incredible thing ever broadcast, and indeed the craziest ever thing caught on camera. I personally love it when the astronauts start like gleefully bouncing around and skipping across the surface of the moon. Classic astronauts. So good.
Coming in at number 10, Superhuman Jeans. If you were to be transported to the future, there wouldn't be a human being you'd recognize. That's not just because they're not your friends or relatives or neighbors. One of the predictions of the world 1,000 years from now is that the humans who live then will be superhuman. Imagine being Superman but in real life. It is theorized that humans in 1,000 years will carry genes that are superhuman to some that we have today. CRISPR technology is already trying to do this. It's a form of gene editing that allows researchers to alter DNA sequences and modify gene function. This can help correct genetic defects, treat and cure diseases, even those passed on. But the technology may also be used to improve the ones we already have. What if you could build muscle faster or deteriorate slower or have incredible hearing and eyesight? All this is possible and more.
At number 9, we have the suicidal comet. Space is nearly endless, making it literally impossible to keep track of everything that's going on in the vast void. But every now and again we get to catch something on camera that might be a once-in-a-lifetime moment. Back in 2013, some of the smartest people in the world over at NASA were looking through the massive Hubble telescope and they witnessed something amazing. A comet blasting through space and then coming in contact with the rays of the sun. A large portion of comets are ice, so this caused the comet to start melting and then break apart into 10 pieces, flying all in their own directions. Each piece of the comet probably weighed somewhere around 200,000 pounds based on its size. Now this happens all the time in space, but to actually see it happen live is nearly a miracle. At number 8, we have the sighting of the Hale-Bopp comet. This comet is blasting around our solar system and it has a much longer trajectory than we do. We all know it takes us 1 year for us to go all the way around the sun, and every time we do, everyone gets drunk and parties because that's just what we do. We don't need to question it, it is just tradition. Well, this comet takes a little bit more time than we do, and by a little bit more, I mean it takes 2,392 years for it to make a full rotation around the sun. So you can suspect that this comet is very far away. Well, 1995 it was close enough that it was spotted through a telescope. If you're wondering how close it was the closest it's ever been, and just so you know, that was still 120 million miles away. So you're not going to be able to visit this thing anytime soon. With the tech we have now, spotting something like this isn't as difficult, but back then spotting the Hale-Bopp comet was so rare and it was masterful to see. And number 7 is the 1914 beer flood. All of England has a great history of consuming beer, and there was one occasion where beer tried to consume them. This was in London. A massive brewery was brewing a massive vat of beer. That's kind of self-explanatory. And when I say massive, I mean this thing was enormous. It had 1.2 million liters of beer inside of it. That's enough for me and all my ancestors to get drunk for years. Well, there was an old rusted bolt that was holding part of this rig together, and it didn't hold at all. The bolt couldn't manage the weight of this mega brew, and it gave way. A massive flood of beer swept through the town, killing 9 people. At number 6, we have the total eclipse. If you saw the total eclipse in 2012, then be happy, because you're not going to get another chance in your lifetime unless you find a way to extend your life by a lot. This event happens once every 138 years. Now, you might get to see a partial eclipse every now and again, but the full eclipse is super rare. And come to think of it, I'm pretty sure I missed it, which is kind of a bummer. But we'll probably have a way to recreate it through VR pretty soon, so I'll just wait for that. I won't even be able to tell that it isn't real. At number 5, we have the Great White Thunderstorm. If you do something and it takes 30 years to build up, then you know it's going to be good. The Great White Thunderstorm happens once every 2 to 3 decades in the northern part of Saturn. It is an insanely large thunderstorm. If a thunderstorm that large happened on our planet, it would most likely destroy civilization as we know it. The storm itself is half the size of Earth, and the lightning bolts that are flying around and vaporizing all the moisture in the area are 10,000 times larger than any lightning bolt we have here on Earth. You know those stories you you hear about people getting hit by lightning and they just walk away? Well, if you got hit by one of these, your skeleton wouldn't even be left. That would get vaporized as well. It would just be like, you just would disappear in a flash or something. Not to mention that the lightning is firing at an insane rate. You can see somewhere around 10 bolts of lightning every second. It makes me second guess our whole going to other planets sort of thing. I don't know if I want to visit anywhere else. Maybe we'll need to check out another space that is a little safer to humans before we try to go to Saturn. Something with nice weather, lightning bolts that don't rip an entire planet apart. At number 4, we have dry Niagara. Could you imagine going to Niagara Falls and then you see there's not a drop of water moving through the falls? That would be a shock. You would think that the end of the world was about to happen and that there's no more water left, that we're all going to be fighting over the remaining clean water in a matter of days and it's going to be an all-out apocalypse. And you wouldn't be wrong for thinking that, but this wouldn't be the case at all. If just to let you know, if you see dry Niagara Falls, there's nothing to worry about. There's only been one time that the falls has stopped running and it was a man-made event. More than half the falls were dammed off so that repairs could be done to the natural wildlife and agriculture in the area to make sure that everything could stay a majestic wonder. Now the problem is this lack of falls would mean less people venture out there to go to see them. Well, actually the exact opposite effect happened. More people came out. Everyone wanted to see what Niagara Falls would look like with nothing flowing through it. But once the repairs were done and all the water was released, everything kind of went back to normal. We have the Carrington event. This has been talked about often. What if a solar flare hit Earth? Well, in 1859, it happened. In the middle of the night, scientist Richard Carrington was observing the night sky, and a blast of color lit up the sky and stayed there. All over the world, people could see what looked like the northern lights, the aurora borealis, but it didn't go away. It stayed up there for quite some time, and it was beautiful. It had a not so beautiful effect, though. The electromagnetic energy zapped all the telegraph wires and destroyed them. Now think about if something like this happened now. There is way more technology on the planet that would be affected by this electromagnetic blast. Depending on the intensity, the outcome could change our lives as we know it. We might see a huge portion of the world lose power, or we might have every phone and computer on the planet explode, and maybe even the internet would go down for who knows how long. At number 2, we have the death of smallpox. I've talked about smallpox on the channel before, with all the scary things going on with COVID-19. We have been doing a lot of deep dives into other illnesses, but the good thing about smallpox is that it has a happy ending. Smallpox used to be one of the most deadly diseases on the planet. Even in the 60s, it was still killing about 2 million people every year. And even if you survived, there was a good chance that you would have permanent scarring all over your body, and it could make you go blind. But then a vaccine was made to fight back against this beast. And with a time investment of 10 years and a financial investment of around $100 million, we saw this sickness destroyed forever. There hasn't been a case of smallpox since 1979, and hopefully we will see more scientific breakthroughs like this in the near future. For the number 1 spot, we have the curing of HIV. The reason I'm putting this at the number 1 spot on the list is not only because it only happened once, but also the way that the doctors were able to cure this disease. This was the case of Timothy Brown. Timothy was suffering from HIV and decided that he would opt into an experimental program to see if he could cure this disease. It was dangerous, painful, and the chances of success were completely unknown. This is how the treatment would work. He would receive a bone marrow transplant from a donor that had a rare mutation. This strange and extremely unique mutation created immune cells that were resistant to HIV. This transplant happened in 2007, and since then Timothy Brown has been rid of his awful sickness, and this has created new hope in the area of research against HIV. Unfortunately, because this treatment is so rare and hard to replicate, doctors have not been able to perfect this treatment a second time, but it has taken them a step closer in the fight for curing HIV.
Coming in at number 10, we have the moment the ground swallowed a tree. This footage, shot of a sinkhole in Louisiana in 2013, is absolutely insane. We watch and see firsthand the destructive power of a sinkhole as it swallows up a group of trees as if they never even existed. The area also sucks in a lot of water from a lake, greatly reducing the water level.
Coming in at number 9, humans may become cyborgs. Scientists and engineers have begun to make incredible improvements to prosthetic limb limbs for amputees, some even being able to connect to our minds in order to operate just like a real arm or leg. For instance, the high-tech Luke arm has finally been given a sensation of touch by researchers at the University of Utah, which is something that's been missing. But we still have a long way to go to make prosthetics compare to having the real-life thing. But in 1,000 years, we will probably have solved that issue and then some. In fact, humans may even elect to swap out an eye or a limb for a superior robotic version, making us potentially half cyborg. Even wearable exoskeletons have already been paired with AI to help give factory workers superhuman strength. Number 8, we will be able to live a lot longer. Life is long, and the short of it is that it goes by in the blink of an eye. I don't think there is a person on this earth that doesn't wish they could have a bit more time in their 20s or a few decades more in general. For people 1,000 years from now, though, that might very well be a reality. In fact, humans might have the capability of living for hundreds of years. Billionaires are already investing millions of dollars into the effort. Considering the fact that the aforementioned gene editing software exists, we might be able to slow down the aging process or even stop it completely. But then, what about disease or car crashes, etc.? Well, by controlling our genes, we may be able to make humans immune to disease. As for car crashes, we will have self-driving cars, so that might happen less often or even not at all. I mean, accidents will still happen, but hey, with medicine being as fantastic as it will be, we may even survive the worst kind of accident. Number 7, only 3 languages. Okay, so, hey, who's a fan of Firefly? Anyone? Raise your hands. Apparently that future isn't too far off the mark, though I really hope reapers don't exist, because that would have been terrifying. But according to an article by the BBC, there may be a chance that we only speak 3 languages globally: Spanish, English, and Mandarin. Others say we may have just one global language that we operate under. It's not like that hasn't been attempted before. In 1880, a Bavarian priest tried to combine French, German, and English, but that was obviously too complicated. But then Esperanto surfaced that was so easy anyone who plays board games could pick it up. But by that point, English had kind of taken over, but here's some perspective. 2,000 years ago, English was an unwritten tongue in the Iron Age of tribes of Denmark. 1,000 years later, it was the language spoken below French-speaking nobles. Now, 1,000 years after that, English is where it is now today. Now, in another 1,000 years, it could be English in first place, or another language could take its place. But there is a common theme that languages do die, and eventually there will be less to choose from. Number 6, humans will live in space. Okay, we've talked about this already. It's happening, guys. People have written the checks. It's only a matter of time. We are already trying to live on the moon for a full year next time we visit. There are plans to go to Mars and live there. Trust me, guys, it's not just for fun. If we humans want to survive for the next 100 years even, we have to find a way to live elsewhere. And by elsewhere, I mean not on Earth. Great minds like Stephen Hawking dealt out warnings to the human race before he passed away, and scientists took them super seriously. Of course they should. So it's not even a question that if we are still around in 1,000 years, it's because we've just pitched up on Mars. Number 5, we might have a relationship with aliens. Speaking of living on Mars, as we continue to explore the universe, who might we meet? A lot can happen in even 100 years, let alone 1,000, and it's only a matter of when, not if. Jamie Matthews, astrophysicist and professor at the University of British Columbia, said, and I quote, "By the year 2118, extraterrestrial life won't be news but historical fact." Unquote. If I'm being honest here, I'm not so worried about the aliens. I'm more worried about how we are going to act. Will it make us more humble, fearful, arrogant? Will we try and colonize or experiment on these beings, etc.? Considering how we've dealt with new discoveries, have we learned from our mistakes? How we will react to life beyond Earth is even harder to predict than when it will happen. Number 4, high-tech medicine. We all should take our hats off to healthcare workers around the world right now and every day, and not just because of COVID. Some remarkable things are happening. In recent years, a woman gave birth after a uterus transplant for the first time, and another gave birth to a baby that began as a frozen embryo 24 years ago. I mentioned earlier that we will probably live a lot longer in 1,000 years, but why? Scientists are currently making strides in being able to treat diseases like cancer that are tailored to an individual's patent genes. Additionally, the use of nanorobots as a way of protecting our body is another avenue scientists are playing around with. The Massachusetts Institute of Technology has created a cell-sized robot that can not only navigate themselves, but also sense issues with their environment. I don't know how I feel about this one, but hey, if we can catch a deadly disease before it spreads, hey, that's definitely worth trying out. Number 3, hotter planet. If you think global warming warming isn't happening. Well, so sorry, you are so wrong. From extreme weather events that are becoming more frequent and more fatal, to sea levels on track to rise 2 to 3 feet by 2100, displacing millions of people around the world, there is so much evidence. One 2015 study even predicted that Greenland won't have any ice by 2050. Hopefully, we will be able to quit the carbon habit, but unfortunately, it won't be as sudden as we need it to be. Temperatures will continue to rise and we are beyond the point of preventing it from happening, but we can potentially slow it down. So the future does look hotter, but hopefully, nanobots will be able to help. In 1,000 years, nanobots might solve a lot of our problems, including the health ones I mentioned. It might also solve environmental damage, air purity, and be able to capture energy from the sun. So, I guess we'll be holding out for a tiny but mighty hero in this case. Number 2, desert rainforest. Sounds impossible, right? Well, the process actually exists and it's called desert greening. Love how literal that is. Though we may not see much of a difference now, in 1,000 years we may find deserts will become tropical rainforests. Desert greening has been going on for several years now, with experiments beginning in the Sahara Desert. This could help solve dozens of problems such as food and water shortages. Currently, the greening process is being performed over 30 million square kilometers of land, and not just on the hot sandy beach deserts, but also on icy tundras. There are many different methods currently in use. One is rotational grazing, which manages where livestock feeds so they can give specific areas breaks, and landscaping efforts to help reduce erosion, evaporation, and the appearances of sandstorms are also underway. So yeah, in 1,000 years, deserts might be a thing of the past. Arabia now. Love that song. Number 1, space elevators. If you're a fan of Willy Wonka and have always dreamed of going up in that magical elevator that can fly, well, hopefully you will in 1,000 years. Because guys, space elevators, if we gotta go visit our relatives in space, we can't just take a rocket every time. That's expensive. We gotta get up there in style. NASA says that a basic concept of the space elevator is sound, and researchers are optimistic that it can happen. Tokyo-based Obayashi Corp has even boasted that they plan to have one built by 2050, and China wants to beat that by 2045, but realistically, it's going to take far longer than that. Experiments on board the International Space Station are already underway, however, and could determine how soon this could become a reality. It could be in hundreds of years, or it could just be in 50. A mini elevator called STARS-Me, devised by Japanese physicists, will simulate on a small scale what conditions an elevator to the stars would encounter in a weightless environment. Experts call the space elevator idea the holy grail for space travel, as it would be an affordable way for everyone to reach the stars.